Without further ado, here is Peter Langer.
Moin, moin München! You're supposed to answer Moin Hamburg! Yeah? Moin, moin München! Okay, so let's see to get this started here. Digga, which function key? Okay.
Full screen.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about BRF+. My first question is, who of you has some kind of education in computer science? Oh, that's very good, okay. And who of you is a programmer? Oh, okay. And who is an other programmer? Okay, you are the right audience for me. So, maybe a little bit more important question now is, who has heard about BRF+? Okay, and who has used it, worked with it somehow? You're the right audience for me. But nevertheless, I want to give an introduction, what it's all about. And BRF+ stands for Business Rule Framework. So the first question arises, what is a business rule? And I took a citation here from Barbara Hall. I took it from the BRF+ book. You might have in your shelf as well. And there she says, business rules are a formal expression of knowledge or preference, a guidance system for steering behavior in a desired transaction. And of course, if we talk about behavior, we're talking about business transactions, something you do in your business life. And these business rules, if you know them somehow, magic, in your project, you identify them and you put them into a business rules management system. Yeah? What is this? Well, any system where you manage business rules, and especially in SAP, BRF+ is such a general purpose business rules management system. You could say, no programming, just customizing. But you all know this is not true, just customizing. You have to have a good portion of knowledge, of programming, if you use BRF+. Originally, it was invented in the context of SAP Business by Design, but we have it in the ECC system, and it's going to be used even more in the S/4HANA on-premise and cloud. SAP likes it, they decided to go for it, like Bob framework also. We will hear about this data from somebody else. So, in the last 3 years, I've been in a project on the mail order company, and I'm leading a team of developers in the area of finance, and we are heavily using finance contract accounting, and there you also find BRF+. And when I came there, already some project before, they had us set up something for a smaller country. Now we're going for Germany, the main country. And I looked in there and I thought, oh my God, what is this? What have they done? And this is the story I want to talk about today. So coming back to what is a business rule, a formal expression of knowledge or preference, a guidance system for steering behavior in a desired direction. So maybe from your studies of computer science, you might have heard about decision tables. Yeah? Have you heard about who's heard about decision tables? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Somehow you know this. I mean, it comes from the 70s. The book I have on my shelf about decision tables, it's a typeset using a typewriter. Yeah? So this is definitely from the 70s. And it has a formal definition and tells you everything you need to know about decision tables. And so I thought, I'm quite familiar with this stuff. And now imagine you are called, help, we need Falco, we need your help, please come as a developer on the project. You need to maintain some decision tables, some BRF+ something. Yeah? So you are a developer, you're in a new project, the Dunning run was tested and failed, and your team lead says, this is your task, fix it. Yeah? And you start this transaction BRF Plus. Yeah? And what you're going to see on the next slide, I took from a real world example here. You find the paths if you want to look it up afterwards in your ECC system. You can work on it, explore it, and maybe take my talk and tell it somebody else, if you like, my advice at the end. So what you then find is something like this. Where's the mic? Okay, so we have some experienced programmers here. Tudor, what do you think is this doing? You can come up forward and we can better see. What do you see? You're the programmer, you look at it. This is the decision table.
We have a couple of steps.
Yes.
And then some of them are fulfilled. Then some code step should be done.
Yes, it's a dunning run, of course. Somebody has not paid, and then first remembrance, second remembrance. What do you think? In which order this will process?
From 1 to 6. 1 to 6.
From 1 to 6, yeah. That's what it looks like. Thank you, Tudor. That's what it looks like. But actually, sorry, Tudor, what you've seen, what you've explained us, is not how it works. So, what you need to do is you have to look into it. Let's see if this works. Yes. So first we look in the first condition step. There's an equation. It has something called last step. Yeah, and it refers to some data dictionary objects. Here this is empty. If the last step is blank, 2 days before due, there's a function, days in delay is equal to -2. If you look in there, this is a typical BRF Plus function. You find an even complex formula, some logical expression, which refers again to a lowest due date function. And if you look in there, you see there's a table refertor of the due date, and you take the minimal time point from it. And then you go back as a developer. Aha, okay, these are the two equations, and if they are both true, then the first collection step is fulfilled, and it takes the collection step 1. Now, next step, next condition, 4 days overdue. Again, this formula, days in delay. Aha, okay. Something similar is used. The last step is blank, or C1. You look in there. Okay. Yeah, looks similar. By now I have a little idea, how this is working. And I go back and collection step blank. Okay, it's really it's blank, nothing in there, space, this is a value. And then high credit risk, what is the meaning of this? Credit data risk is equal to risk class high. Okay, this is a D in there. Oh yes, I remember this. Of course, I know the FICA data structure, so this speaks to me. So let's have a look at the next condition, number 3, which results in condition step 3. Look into the condition step. Last step is C2. We know this already, yes. But let's have a look. What have they put in? Yes, C002. So this is really identical from the result. Something status is changing during the Dunning run. Then days in the delay again is greater than or equal to 12. We have the same formula. Okay, we don't have to look at there anymore because we are already familiar to this. Because we have a good brain, we remember this. Then days since last step is equal to 8. Okay, what kind of formula is this? Okay, some new functionality, but last step date, another formula of BRF Plus. I guess, another field, AusDT instead of VDN. So this is something different. This is the table. I remember this, of course. I know the data model as a ABAP programmer as well in this area of financial accounting. So I go back, and high credit risk we know already. So there's only, now it's not high risk state. So let's look in the next condition. There, last step is C003. And then we have no open work items, another functionality in here. What you do there is a lookup of a data table in the database, and it was not passed via the context. So, and then we have high credit risk again, we know this already, and then we go into the next condition. And looks similar, but here are two negations here, and 2 days since last step. Again, this formula. Yeah, back again, back again, back again. Yeah, and then last condition step, number 6. Let's have a look at here. High credit risk again, and 4 days overdue. Yes, it's again, days in delay is greater than or equal to 4. So, and then you go back, and then down here in this line, this is processed from up to down, and this, if this is not true, but false, yeah, then the last condition rises, and everything is set, the collection step here is set to space. Okay, cool. Now, me as a tutor, here's a developer. Now you have had a look into everything. You need a coffee, you get a coffee, you pass by me, I'm your team leader, and ask you now, tutor. What is it doing? Where's the mistake of the Dunning one? Yeah, who can remember all this details you have seen in the dependencies? And you know, this is something, this is not an example I have invented to fool you or something. This is delivered by SAP. Yeah, this is delivered by SAP. Maybe there was a student who wrote it or something, I don't know. I'm sorry if you are the one, if you're listening to me, I'm very sorry, I don't want to blame anybody personally. But I want to make you to be aware of that what is delivered is not always a good example. Yeah? So, but if you put this all together, if you sort it out, this now video was of a length of 5 minutes. Now imagine if you leave it like this, and every day, as a programmer, you have to know, find your way into the what is the program about. And then every day you might use n times 5 minutes to look up what this is all about. So if you put it together, this is what it's all about. You can see here the columns are the different functions, like collection step comes directly from the context of BRF plus. Days in delay is one of the formulas which was used in several steps in these 4 steps. Risk was referred to in these steps. This is also a data field from the context. The days since last step is a formula in BRF plus used in these 2 steps. And open work items is a function used in these 2 steps. And now you can see more clearly that in the beginning, the collection step, of course, is space. Yeah? So it starts with the first line, and as soon as 2 days before it's going to be delayed, the system goes into collection step 1. Then, if the system is in collection step 1, or if it is space, here, and days in delay is greater or equal than 4, and this is a high-risk customer, then we have step C2. So, and if you are in C2, here, then the days in delay is greater or equal to 12, and this is not a high-risk customer, and the days since last step is greater or equal 8, then you go to C3. So, and now you see immediately there's 2 kinds of customers with high risk and with non-high risk. And so this is not a linear evolving, yeah, but something else is happening. And you have to try to grab this as a developer who has presented this already at the place. You're not the designer, because if you're the designer, you would have done it differently, of course. But now you have to find out how this works. So what would you now ask, for instance, a business consultant? There's some business consultant has made a nice business blueprint, And from the business blueprint, this results, there is an error. You are supposed to fix the error. So what would you, for instance, ask? Tudor. Nonsense.
What is the error?
Yeah, good question. What is error? But you're a clever programmer. You're supposed to make up your mind in a way. First, you do an analysis. You want to understand the program. So what questions might arise regarding the algorithm from this table?
Does it fulfill all possible conditions?
Yes, for instance. Yeah. Anybody else has a question to the business developer? Andre?
I would ask if the risk assessment of the customer can change during the time run.
Yes, okay. Christian, what is your question?
Do you have some test data?
Okay, we come to that later. Any other questions to the business consultant?
What's the sequence priority of the entries?
Yeah, okay. What is it? Yeah, okay. That's all good questions. And sorry, Tudor, in the beginning, in the very first chart, you explained me how everything is working, but now we see how it is working, or at least we think, have a better understanding of how it's working, and we are able to ask questions. Yeah? How much more time do I have?
Take a little more time because we started.
Okay. So, the main point I want to do here, and this is the story I tell every team member who's new and who's supposed to do some BRF Plus, and even they are sent from other teams to me. I shall then explain how to do it in a good way. My thoughts are, this is a decision table, that the decision table is, so to say, the core function of these BRF Plus. This is where the decision is made, what to do next. And all the functions around, and the context around, this is just supporting it. So if this is a core function, then everything, all conditions which are prior to the decision should be visible on the level of the decision table. And of course, naming a high-risk customer just by the letter D is not so nice, from a naming convention point of view. There should stay, is a high-risk customer or not. But this depends on the values you have in the data or customizing table. So, of course, it's better when you do this from scratch, and you can make a design which speaks more to you. But nevertheless, I have decided to put everything in the table and then rather make a sheeting paper, where I can look it up. And and as I already said, don't believe that every sample is a good example. Yeah, so don't trust what you have in the system, because in the beginning I was, how do I tell him that something went wrong to the developer? Then I found out it was not his fault. They just continued to build an even extremely more complex what you've seen, but in the same way, I opened the table and it was all like X. It was not understandable. And if I looked in it, there were dependencies and unused functions, and even from the logical point of view, conditions which contradict to each other. This would never have functioned in the way the business consultant wanted to do. And when we started to clean it up, to tidy it up, then we understood much better what it is about. So my strongest advice, if you want to work with a BRF Plus, and if you're a beginner, and everybody is a beginner if you do it the first time, get yourself a coach. Yeah? Somebody you can discuss with who has experience in a way how to design BRF Plus in the right way. So this is a main statement here for you today. Of course, there are other questions regarding this. For instance, should we implement functions like days and delay or lowest due date in the BRF Plus or outside in other? This is a valid question. And so outside, if you're on a premise system, you can do so. If the person who's in charge of BS Plus is an ABAP, of course you must know ABAP if you want to do it in ABAP. If you want to use test-driven development, yeah, and my advice is not if you want to use it, you should use it, of course. First you write a unit test, and then you call it the BF Plus, and then you compare the result. This is something you can't do in BF Plus. You can simulate, you can analyze your functions to analyze if you fulfill some specific requirements, but you cannot check if a specific result is met. And I'll tell you something. Key users are going to change this table, and afterwards you don't know if it still does what it did before, or what is the difference. You need to have unit tests if you work with BF Plus. If you prefer to have an overview, that means here we have many, how do you say this in English? You must fill in many fields, you know. It's not the textual entry, it's a field entry, typical SAP. But if you prefer to type, if you want to have an overview, you know, of the whole program, then you better do it in a programming language. You know, it's like even in smartphones, you have the functionality where you can press a button and it generates the whole program so that you can use find to find a specific location of it. You can't do this in here. And inside, if you're in a cloud system, of course, you must use BF Plus only, there's no other chance. If you have one person or more, every day they work with BF Plus and they know it by the heart, then they should use it. And if you do nothing else but BF Plus, because then you are the expert. So, thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, now is your chance. Yes. Oh, wait, we get you.
Yesterday we saw the S4HANA Cloud extension capabilities. Is it maybe a way to build some the S4HANA Cloud via class rules and logics and bring it into the extension model?
Well, that's what the colleagues from SAP said, that they want to use it just in that way. Yesterday we've just seen these bodies. I don't know where it is hidden. If it's already in the cloud system itself. Yeah, I don't know. Is anybody here who knows BF Plus in the cloud system where this is hidden? Christian, do you know anything about it?
So it should be the same mechanism that you have within your body. It should be
in the same place. Instead of body, you call it BF Plus.
Which would make sense for people, but it's not yet there.
Okay, it's not yet rolled out. But that is their plan. They want to use BF Plus to do business rules and the bot framework for persistence. And of course, we have this subset of ABAP, which we have used yesterday. You can do some programming too, but I don't know how this is comparable. Christian, have you found out already the complexity? ABAP, the small ABAP, the enhancements versus the BF Plus expressibility?
So the idea is to run business rules in S4, but it's not said that they are also implemented or designed in S4. So maybe there will be another content that's right from the middle.
Okay.
You design them in the separate rules repository or in some platform, and then you call it to the outbound.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, so they tend to put all the business rule engines into the cloud platform, and from there then you control the S4. Just to summarize what this means. Okay, there's another question, Shimal?
In your real-time example that you showed,
yes.
How this was used, how was this implemented in your ABAP code, or how you
This?
Yeah. How did you call the BF Plus and how it was implemented in your program? It's like
okay, so this is the program, so to say. Yeah, this is a kind of domain-specific language, the decision table. And if you call it from ABAP, you must instantiate some classes, and you pass the context parameters, which are these, which could be these only, because this is the only ones used, but could be also others if you want to have an alternative implementation. And then the parameters are passed. This is evaluated by the framework. It's business rules framework, it's a framework. And then the result goes back, and you must also, of course, bind a variable to the result. The result can not only be just one column, it could be several columns as well. Yeah?
Similar to call of a method or something like that.
Yeah, similar.
Just the hint, there's a report in SL in ABAP, one is a simple report. You bind this decision table into a function. This is the outside interface of That's the outside interface of BRF Plus, your function. You'll get an ID. You just type in the ID, and SAP provides you with the full logic how to call this function from ABAP. And then you have to use an exit body or whatever to call it. It's very convenient.
Yeah. Either this is interpreted or it can also generate the ABAP code from this table. So in this sense, it's a kind of model-driven development. Yeah? Here, this is the model used in DSL of a decision table which generates the ABAP code to be executed. It's very good for performance. Okay, any other questions?
Maybe can you say a little bit more about the process that you did to go from the suboptimal solution to better?
Yeah, what I have done here, I did what you have seen. I have made the screencast. Of course, it was a little bit longer. I have shortened it a little bit. But I went through all these functions, and I took a piece of paper and I wrote down what is in there. And then I typed in this, and then I did it again and again to make sure that this is really identical, because I didn't have the time to write the test. Because the test takes more time than the solution. Right, yes?
But the SAP example comes without tests?
Yes, that's good. I didn't, so far I have not seen tests because the test must be written in ABAP, and normally they are delivered just here in the BRF Plus repository, and especially in this example from the FI/CA, I know there's no tests or something. In other modules, I don't know. Yes?
Do you know, is there a roadmap that you use this framework in the variant configuration in the LO4C?
I don't know. I'm not in this topic, so maybe somebody else knows in variant configuration. Do you know if this is used there? That was Andreas' question.
As far as I know, no.
Martin says, as far as he knows, not. No, not. It's not going to be used. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's a great presentation. And now, before we go into our break, you'll notice I'm kind of the time cop here today. So we're exactly on time if you all cooperate now with our first yoga exercise, business yoga with Brigitte. And after that, we'll go into our first break. So please, all eyes on the stage and all attention on Brigitte.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here again for moving and relaxing your body, mind, and your soul. Please stand up. Feel the feet on the ground. Relax your knees. Tilt your pelvis forward. Please put your hands together and straight up. go to the left. In the middle. And go to the right. And in the middle. Turn to the left. To the middle. Turn to the right. Turn to the middle. Up again. And left. Middle. And right. Middle. Turn to the left. Middle. Turn to the right. Middle. And to your heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brigitte. So we'll see everyone back here in the arena at precisely 10 o'clock. Okay? Be there or be square, okay? Thanks.
Anfang März? Ah, okay. Was denn? In Schulferien, also nicht in Osterferien, auch nicht das Wochenende davor, oder? Okay.
Das ist terminiert direkt.
Okay,
weil es liegt
ja.
Gastgeber erst.
So AOK oder?
Also die Idee ist nicht, jetzt Anfang März zu machen, aber
wir wollten euch noch was erzählen. Das haben wir im Hinterkopf schon mal. Solange ich noch in Heilbronn bin, kann ich auch nur nach Frankfurt fahren.
So macht man nicht so in Heilbronn.
Ja gut, wenn ihr jetzt unter der Woche irgendwo in Salzburg rumdümpelt, dann ist es halt mal schnell fürs Wochenende nach Frankfurt noch ein bisschen.
Da muss man dann losschauen.
Ja, oh. Ja.
Sonst kommt nach Frankfurt mal nicht.
Ja, klar.
Du bist nicht im Fernbleiben, da gibt es kein Geld.
Ich bin halt schon so viel unterwegs. Ich wollte jetzt eigentlich auch, hatte auch gedacht, die Idee, nach Cluj zu fliegen, ist auch nicht schlecht.
Ich glaube, zu viel passt.
Ich bin auch noch.
Ich kann dir.
Berlin, dann war ich in Bremen, dann fahre ich nach Barcelona.
Wann fliegst du?
Ja. Sonntag, ja. Ich habe schon angefangen. Ich hatte noch nicht. Ich fliege für Samstags, weil ich sicher war, dass wieder InnoJam stattfindet. Ich hielt es für ausgeschlossen, dass es einfach cancelt.
Ja.
Damit habe ich nicht gerechnet.
Aber ich bin auch Sonntag.
Und ich konnte ihn am Montag umbuchen. Das war meine Buchungsklasse irgendwie das nicht. Also Wochenendflieger kannst du umbuchen, aber nur auf andere Wochenendtermine, aber nicht auf den Montag. Ich komme das schon hin.
Hast du mit dem Docker noch mal beschäftigt? Oder? Weil man. Also, ich hab's mal. Ja. Okay. Okay. Da geht's schon wieder? Okay. Ja.
Letztes Jahr hier auch. Ich habe jetzt die Chance gehabt, mit meinem Blog 10.000 Leute
Nee, weil ich.
Tatsächlich dann versucht, und dann das auch noch ich hatte das Docker sehr schnell zum Laufen.
Ich hatte nämlich meinen Chef, mein Chef war mir nämlich noch kurz vor meinem Urlaub einen ganz schönen Docker gegeben. Weil er meinte, ich hatte ihm ja schon mal gesagt, dass Docker das Subsystem da auch mal gebaut hat. Und dann meinte er, später habe ich mal angefangen. Und wir kriegen auch neue Laptops. Also da gibt es auch, wird auch ein Link. Ich muss jetzt mal ich habe mich mit Docker bis jetzt überhaupt noch nicht beschäftigt.
Einfach zu bekommen alles.
Okay.
Das wollte ich wieder machen.
Ja.
Laptop, Windows 7 Laptop und so weiter.
Ich hatte mir dann auf meinem Mac dann einfach in der virtuellen Maschine installiert mit dem Ubuntu drin oder mit dem SUSE, da bin ich noch, da schwank ich noch, was ich tatsächlich nehme, und dann wollte ich da mal drin installieren. Erstmal zumindest locker und dann mal gucken, was danach kommt.
Ja, also das ist bei manchen auch noch. Ich mache noch mal eine virtuelle Maschine laufen, gerade groß genug ist, danach ist leider mein System zu klein. Ich habe nicht mal aufgepasst, ich habe mir 2 Doppelgramm bestellt, dass ich auf 16 GB bestellt habe, den Laptop. Aber ich habe nicht aufgepasst, ich habe mir 2 GB
okay.
Weil es aber Standard rausgeliefert. Mittlerweile gibt es ja noch das Standard Warenkorb bei uns. Aber ich kriege erst nächstes Frühjahr wieder 9.
Ja, okay. Ja, also
da muss ich ja darauf achten, dass ich dann halt auch eine große SSD mache.
Ich weiß gar nicht, was wir da jetzt in der Platte drin haben. Also wir kriegen jetzt auch neu. Wir sollen wahrscheinlich jetzt vielleicht sogar gerade gekommen sein, also, weil ich war ja ganz vergessen da. Und dann habe ich dann auch, wollte ich damit auch mal ein bisschen
Der hat ja schon laufen.
Ja, habe ich gelesen. Hast du das denn, Gregor?
Ja.
Hast du einen Moment oder bist du?
Ein Ohr habe ich.
Dein Docker, hast du das auf Windows laufen oder hast du das auf dem
Mac?
Auf dem Mac in der virtuellen Maschine oder direkt auf dem Mac?
Auf Mac Docker installiert.
Aha.
Und das tut ordentlich. Also wir haben gestern auch auf den Windows-Geräten gesehen, das war performancemäßig so bitter.
Okay.
Also wir haben es auf Windows 7 mal versucht, allein das kannst du abhaken. Ja. Überhaupt gar nicht.
Ja. Und ich habe es auch noch auf dem Server bei mir, auf Nativ, also wirklich Blech.
Ja.
Da habe ich ein Ubuntu drauf und habe da halt Docker.
Ja. Was für ein Ubuntu? Das 16?
Ja, irgendein Server, irgendein Long-Term-Server.
16 TLS, ne, genau. Ja, das wollte ich auch, weil wir kriegen auch neue Rechner, neue Notebooks. Und da die unmanaged sein werden, werden wir da auch ein Ubuntu wahrscheinlich draufpacken.
Ja. Und genau.
Aber selbst auf deinem Mac läuft das so?
Ja, genau. Wobei ich hab mehr als die starten und mich dort anmelden, habe ich noch nicht gemacht am Arbeitsdecker.
Okay. Ja, weil das Problem, denke ich ja auch, was passiert denn dann? Also, wenn
genau.
Du spätestens dann, wenn du einen User anlegst, was weiß ich, oder Kennwort änderst.
Wo ist die Persistenz?
Genau, du musst das ja wegschreiben.
Genau.
Ja, aber gut, das ist ja dann
normal ist
Container.
es ja, genau. Aber kann ich auch den dann sauber stoppen, wieder starten? Das habe ich bin einfach da Dockerlei.
Ja.
Das ist halt das Thema. Und bei der VMware sage ich halt einfach pausieren und alles ist gut. Gell? Aber da muss man. So, Agenda.
Ja, oder kommst du nächste Woche Mittwoch nach Frankfurt, hält der Christian sein Vortrag zu HANA und Docker?
Ja, habe ich gesagt. Ja, Stammtisch am Mittwoch.
Stammtisch mit Inhalt, Vorträgen.
Habe ich gelesen, ne? Aber
das wird dann halt ein bisschen mit uns beim Ziel. Der ist ja auch Basis. Das ist ja auch Basis.
Ja, trotzdem. Aber
gibt es doch Docker können als Basis.
Ja.
Ich muss auch als Developer muss ich auch Node können oder so. Ne?
Ja, deswegen hat mein Chef ja auch gemeint, ich sollte mich damit mal beschäftigen. Da gibt er mir so ein 800 Seiten Buch, ne? Oder noch dick.
Aber du hast ja CT wahrscheinlich abonniert.
Ja.
Da war ja jetzt auch mal so ein kleine Docker-Einführung.
Ja, ich habe da.
Ja, die haben mir auch aufgeschlagen auf der Seite, da liegen auf dem Stapel.
Mein Chef der war vorher im Urlaub, hat sich so ein riesen Buch gekauft. Ich weiß gar nicht, so eine Docker-Bibel oder sowas. Ne? Und dann hat er mir das mal zugegeben, hat er als EPUB gekauft. Das Ding hat, glaube ich, 1000 Seiten. Also so einen riesen Schicken, den wollte er nicht mitnehmen. Ne? Und den habe ich dann mal angefangen. Ich meine, der ist gut beschrieben. Ne? Aber ohne das mal irgendwo selber dann zu installieren und zu machen, ich glaube, nur Theorie ist ein bisschen.
Ja, nee, du musst es wirklich hands-on gleich mitprobieren. Gut, jetzt habe ich zumindest mal, sollte dann, warte, ich muss noch speichern. Dann sollte die Agenda so langsam dann auch wirklich auftauchen. Wenn das funktioniert, dass man hier backendseitig was ausblendet. Ciao! Wir haben die Agenda!
spannend.
Ja, oder wenn du jetzt zum Beispiel was kriegst, wo du privat
Ja, ja.
sagst, naja, ich gebe es mir jetzt aus, also
Hä?
ich gebe mir es
Ja,
auf,
Leute,
und nächstes Jahr was Größeres, das darfst du auch nicht.
Ja, ja, ja.
Aber letztendlich, wenn du zum Beispiel sagst, du tust jetzt dieses Jahr deine Bude nicht weißeln, ja? Du musst deine Wohnung alle 10 Jahre weißeln, jetzt schiebst du es ein Jahr. Das heißt aber nicht, nur weil du heute dieses Jahr nichts gebraucht hast, dass es weg ist, sondern du hast halt nächstes Jahr kommt es dann aber. Ja? Oder wie mit den Werkstattkosten. Ja? So nach dem Motto, na, ich gehe jetzt, damit ich jetzt in dem Monat meine Kohle stimmt, gehe ich jetzt nächsten Monat in die Werkstatt und zahle dann halt meine Kohle. Ja?
So let's get everybody back into the arena. We can start with the action again. So are we almost complete in the arena? Remember, I'm the time cop, and I'm very strict. Have to think of a good punishment for anyone who comes late.
Oh yeah.
No lunch.
No lunch, yeah.
Yeah, oh, that would be a very, very tough punishment. Sorry?
No seating if someone is late.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, standing room only if you're late. So, yeah, we have a really tight schedule today, and so want to make sure that we end on time. Still hear voices in the coffee area.
That's good.
Last call. Perfect. Who do I see coming right here? Okay. So maybe I can have our sponsor from Progressive come up on the stage here, Falco. Falco was the kind host of our SAP Community Open Spaces yesterday. Really great program. Thank you very much for that. And Progressive has been a really loyal sponsor of our SAP Stammtisch Munich and also of this event. So Falco, a few words from you.
Well, pretty much everything I want to say is that we fixed some of those Lebkuchenhorns again. So I'll put them on the stairs in the front and here, and I'll be happy if you grab one when you leave today's event. Just that they don't stay here. Well, however, if you're interested in any nice projects, positions, you can always chat me or give me a call, whatever. So enjoy your event, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Progressive for the loyal sponsorship. Then just one more thing. I'd like to have everybody stand up. Please stand up.
For what? Why you're right.
Now, please stay standing if you also attended the SITMUC last year. If you weren't here last year, then you've got to sit down. Okay? Okay? Please stay standing if you attended the year before. Please stay standing if you attended the year before that. Oh, I've lost count now. If you were here, if you were here in 2012, yeah, 2012, yeah. Sorry?
13 was the first.
If you were here in 2013, you should still be standing. How many are still standing?
Ja, ja, ja.
I'm standing. Yeah, I
Six or
was here
seven.
too.
Okay.
And now you see how we've grown. This is quite amazing. So everybody stand up one last time. Let's do a selfie of this group. Yeah? Gregor's got the camera ready.
And the best thing. Okay, Google. Nimm ein Selfie auf.
Thank you. All right. So now we're ready for our next presenter. Another loyal participant and contributor to our SIT book is Rainer Winkler. He's a senior developer for SAP BW and ABAP, and he started his career at SAP, where he learned SAP BI as an in-house consultant. So he's my SAP BI hero. He's interested in tools to improve software maintenance and works currently as an external developer for an SAP customer. And Rainer's talk is how to survive the chaos with tips and tricks to handle legacy ABAP code. So, Rainer, the stage is yours.
Okay, as useful as closing title is somewhat related, but the date is at least correct. It's not 2000. I had one thought, it's 270 this year, and this is okay. I want to start with a big thank you, because this whole talk would not exist if the community people like Gregor, Andrea, Damia, and who knows, it's forgotten, too many, sorry, did not do an awesome work, and invited, for instance, to the Gilbar. He's from a very different community. He's a small talk developer. He's not SAP IT, and he works in visualization of software. And I always wanted to make the second part of my talk, but I was not able to do. And then I looked at Substitution, and I did to Untitled, and suddenly there was this very strange talk, and saying most of the people did not understand. Understood what Tudor said, and I even remember I had two nice people sitting next to me, and they were both shocked. They say it's very bad talk and very not good thing, and it was not understandable. But it was just a missing thing. I needed to have the second part of the speech. Okay, really thank you all to Daniel. It's a wonderful thing. You do a very good work. Okay, this was this. Oh, no, I'm at the wrong side. Huh? I lost part of my phone.
Okay. That was it. Yeah. Do under.
No,
Yeah.
I modified the ISO file.
Jetzt da.
It worked. Okay.
Good.
Legacy code. One important point is to have words in mind. And I did not know this was legacy code, but if you Google to legacy code and you have problems with coding, some code is so problematic. Sometimes it feels to me like monsters. A lot of problems and everything is working so that I'm not able to succeed. And if you Google for legacy code, you find the people that work on this and that have tricks. There's a good book by Michael Feathers, worth to read. And the definition is, normally you think of legacy code, it's all code, but indeed Michael Feathers defines it as code without tests. And that Andrea Goulet is making with her husband a company in the United States. They work on corrupt application, on corrupt, not working apps, for instance. She defines legacy code as code without communication artifact. It's code that is not really telling what it's doing. Again, here it's a very good article. I put the Twitter link into this, where she explains how she runs a good company, how she gets people and gets the people to work to attack how to say, really difficult code. The whole talk is full of slides, and it's too much slides. So it is, so to some extent, it's designed for slide share. Because then if you have more slides inside, you can go into. Because my experience is if you work with problematic code, you need a lot of techniques. And you should not apply all the techniques, but you should be able to do a lot of things, because depending on what kind of monster you have to have the right spell to fight it. And if you have a monster and you don't learn the spell, it's difficult to learn a spell when you're in a project working 60 hours a day, as I did, for instance, years ago. And you know, it's difficult to learn object-oriented programming if you have a 60-hour day. And the second point is it's about code smells. Normally, if I work with problematic code, I have this idea of smells in my mind. And code smell is something that smells not good, and something that makes work difficult. For instance, duplicated code, wrong names, overcomplicated design, too many branches, loops, long methods, and so on. But it's difficult. Some people can handle some things, others cannot. So there's also no objective idea what is good or not. Then comes some else slides I just could not delete. They have no relation to this talk. One problem, for instance, legacy code is that when there are errors, you don't see them. Or if there is a bug, you don't see it. There's a tendency sometimes to hide bugs. If there's a blue screen, if there's a crash, the customer say, oh, it's a bad program, but a bad program. But if you have a crash and you have a dump protocol, it's sometimes easy to find out what it is. So often legacy code lacks logging statements or assert statements that check what sort of code behaves. The other point is often you do not know. In some projects, I really do requirement engineering. I teach myself how to requirement engineer to track down what is in legacy code. Normally you don't have it. So you're somehow lost. The next point is performance. Often when I talk in my company, they have the feeling, it sounds like the customer has only one problem, that's the one time. But what does it help you if the code is giving the wrong result, but this is fast? Also, this is a problem when you work with coding and something that makes it the legacy code. Okay, test-driven design. Normally, I will start with test. By the way, I do not start with the test normally. I start with the kind of typing I feel best. Sometimes I have the feeling I have to do a test. If I do a very critical program, I would normally always start with a test. But I'm always happy if I finish my work and do what I decide is my best. Okay. And then comes the next point. I didn't have my medicine this week. But one big problem you have, sometimes people want to prevent problems. And the world is full of advices. No? I also give you advices. No? Then you go to your project and try to follow all my advices and other people's advices. But the problem is, these advices, when you apply them in your project, they should solve a problem you have, not a problem someone else has. No? But if you apply a rule that is not your problem, you add only complexity. This is my medicament. I think I said it before at this point. Yeah. It reduces the blood pressure. I'm 54 now, and doctors find my pressure too high, and they tell me take this. And I use this to make me healthier, but most of you should not dare to eat this, because it will drop your pressure too low. But I have a feeling when we do computer programming, we do not have this in mind. Before I apply a design rule, I need a prescription. There's an analysis, a coding will be ill or is ill, and then we decide what medicine do I have to give, because medicine also have a problem. You know, Ramipur doesn't make you always a better or healthier person. It also has side effects. No? And software or design rule has also a side effect. No medicine without prescription. This is a design stamina hypothesis from Martin Fowler. And the root talk makes only sense if I say this is a functionality, this is a time, if I start to invest. And I think that the big problem is to go to work, to have a high time pressure, and then to start investing things. I do it quite often, but I must say I'm always very, very afraid. And really, sometimes I think the customer comes and say, "What are you doing? Get out." And so I go here and tell you how I'm working. And here's the code. There's no design. Okay, clean code. Provide automatic tests. The earlier technique was clean code. If I design well, the machine will work well. The other idea is if I test, I will understand. This is clean code as I write it now. It's quite long coding, and the idea is I can understand this and I can check this. This is unit test. You have a rocket engine, and before you put it into the expensive rocket, you put it on a test setting. And I have, in the moment, somehow a mindset. A few years ago, I had the idea of doing clean coding. In the moment, I have the idea of doing clean tests. Because I found out, even if I do the best I can, if I do the best programming, I start to not understand what I want. And a lot of legacy code is my own written legacy code. Because if I have no testing, if I have no proper solution, I forget, I start not understanding what the code is doing. And so normally I do a combination of clean code and automatic test. Okay, now, this is again for SlideShare. This is a method by Michael Feldert if some code is problematic, I first add a unit test, then I refactor to simplify changes, and then I can add the new functions and make changes in the code. I discussed it yesterday. Are the managers here, project leaders, or are there more developers here? Okay, the manager should not listen. It's not for you. It's for the developers. You may think, okay, I will try unit test in my project. You will find out it's not so easy to have my contact data in mind is not so bad and to contact me. But the other point is, then it takes time, and suddenly you find out, oh, I added unit test and 1 day is gone. I invested 1 day for adding the unit test for an existing class. Not so small, but a normal class. And then you think Rainer Winter may be faster because he gave this talk. I'm not faster. I need currently a day, and I think it is too long. But I learned so many things in this day. I understand the coding. I find a lot of bugs I did not see when I looked at the coding. And I have a safety belt, and I have this automatic testing because I do it once, but in the years that come, I have this test. But it is not so fast. Okay, unit test is to understand. A unit test is not testing the correctness. The correctness you test with integration test. But if you have only a unit testing, you want to understand the code, you characterize it, how does it behave, to see if the behavior changes, and you documentate how the function is working. And the integration test checks for correctness. You can do this also with other unit tests. Okay, and now maybe 50 minutes. 50 minutes. I want to show how I'm working, and I open an Eclipse program, and I always open an Eclipse program by going to the model and click on the method. This one here. I want to show you the method activate of the Z-unit simple, and I open an RDT link. And look, this is the method, and I can click F3, and here I have the coding. It is the way I'm doing this every day. I do not want to work here different work in my project. Okay, I do not have time to give an introduction to unit testing. But one point I would like to stress, to me, there was a game changer. Because SAP developed statements here, testing. And if you look into the SCN, you find out that the people have different opinions. Some people say we should not work with testing. We should work in the standard way. This is sort of clear. We should, the method is doing some simple thing, it's just getting the actual date and returns the day. It's a very simple coding. And the proper way is to inject with an external method, a method that returns you a day, and then you can, in test, inject a mock instance. It is a very good design. It is a very good design. It is wonderful design. But there is one problem. It is a bit much effort for getting a substitution code. The next point is you can have a parameter. And in case of test, you do not call cdatum, you get it from a parameter you provided with the constructor. But then you have coding that is adapted to the testing. It is normally not uncommon to adapt an application also so that it be tested. Some codings cannot be tested, and this is, according to Michael Fraser, a sign of good or bad architecture. So an architecture should also enable testing. But okay, you can do this, but it's a long process. That is what I'm doing currently. I'm doing not always, but I just put a test theme in, and then I have here a test injection. That is simple. And then people say to me, this is not bad because this is productive coding, and then you have the word test. And I do not want to have the word test in there. This appears to be really important. And maybe if SAP names the statement, not calling it testing, but provide an alias for this. Just an alias, and there's no test. Word test in it, maybe people would use it. But the point is, in production, this is not used, it is completely ignored. And that changed everything for me because I did unit tests for simple cases when there are no dependencies, but I did not do unit tests for typical coding. Maybe 5% of my coding had unit tests. In the moment, I would say 70% of my coding is unit tests. And second point is with test themes. Often I stopped doing this because I had problems. And then I ran out of time. But with test themes, I don't run out of time. But you should learn this. For instance, if you have here a select statement, if you inject just coding like this, it may work for your first part of the test. But a select is an if condition. If the selection conditions are true, return this value and set the subreturn code to 0. If it is not the case, clear this value and set the subreturn code to 4. And so sometimes this test injection coding is longer, and this is something you learn when you're doing it. And the problem is, when you start a unit test, you're probably the only person that uses unit tests in your project. And so this is often a hard thing. And so to communicate people that do unit tests, ask me, can we do a Skype testing and show it to colleagues. So it's really something I would advise you to do. And it's not so easy to learn how to make a good test. And also not so easy to learn how to make a test that is not testing too much. Okay, I will jump now a bit in my slides. And go to the next topic. use a lot. I want to show our picture. The test example you saw, this is our picture. And it's really easy and lasting and awesome, but really quiet. And for instance, that you can do open source development in SRT, that you can easily make pull requests on this. That I had a test coding, and it is not difficult for you to go to GitHub and to collaborate in this coding. Can I be here? The repositories for this one. It's really, this one here. This is really a game changer. It really makes collaboration so much easier. Okay, second point, why you shouldn't interrupt the programmer by changing rules. Managers should listen up. I think if someone is not working as a developer, he does not understand this. But sometimes I was once working in a very difficult situation. It was a high time pressure. I had to finish in 3 days. I did a complex coding, and then a good friend of me, he clapped me on my back, and I collapsed. I cried. I felt like I was attacked. It was like in a war zone, and there was a bullet hitting me, and I needed 3 hours to return back to work. And sometimes developers can focus in an extreme way. They get lost, and if you just touch them, everything goes off. And then the point is, and that is where Tudor Gilbert had this brilliant thought. Can we keep this in my mind? Because there's a weekend, there's an evening, there's a night, or there may be weeks to go before a new project, before I have to return to the coding. And so this is the sketch topic. I can do sketches like Mike is doing with paper, but I think it's difficult. And some people do sketches with PlantRoom now, but PlantRoom is we do class diagrams. I work on methods and attributes. I do not work on classes. And so I did some things with PlantRoom, but it was too well. Currently, I work with Substitution and Model. Tudor Gilbert made this. He could talk about user analysis, and it's a platform for language-independent refactoring. And so they have techniques to extract code information in a container format, and then an application that is currently on Smalltalk since 10 years or so, but it's an old technique, and to analyze code programs. And so to work with this, I need an extractor. This is Substitution. It's easy to Google it. You find it immediately. And it's just a single website. And it's also not extracting the coding. It is only extracting what are the names, but not your if statements and no coding. Because I want to have it in a way that it can be safely installed at a customer. And even at a customer who is afraid of things. Because if you have a lot of legacy code, sometimes a lot of rules are put on us developers. And so it is really easy to install. And then I made diagrams like this. Black is a class, blue is the attribute, and red is method. This is a real customer application. This is the second one. You see, and there's some link that should not exist. And there are some islands. And my expression is that it's user analysis. This is a scientific project. But I do not do science. I do software. Okay, then I added this. I have multi-level unit, so for the class. And you can also use this SRP extractor not to make these diagrams. You can use it also as a multi-level usage that returns also, for instance, BW transformation. And you may increase it to have further functionality. And then I needed a second application. And this looks also into real life coding. And then there's further logic in it to make smaller diagrams. This is only a part of an application. Now we'll jump to this just to show. This, for instance, is a diagram of the SRP extractor. And it always looks a bit strange. But what is interesting is this is it's a living model. See? With some lines across in one way, I just put it to the side. And I always think, shall I make in the moment more beautiful diagrams? But the point is, this is a very compact way. In the way I know a line goes in this direction, so it's obviously going to that point. And then you can speak with this object. I can go to this. I don't know whether the highlighting will work. No, it doesn't work. But normally you can also highlight, and I can inspect this object. I can make a new, smaller diagram and say, show me only everything that's related. There are YouTube forms for this, or I need to translate it out. And what I like very much is I can link. Click on this. And again, this is an anti link I showed before already. Again. And this, by the way, is also working for BW. I didn't implement it, but they also have BW also its work is going into Eclipse. And the whole linking functionality is already implemented, but I found no blog describing this. And I had no time in the moment, for instance, to jump into this. Okay, everything is on the internet. You can contact and speak me, and I'm running out of time. But one point is, to me, it is not a technique to show classes, attributes, methods. To me, it's a technique to show data storing things, database table, an attribute, a file, and coding storing things, a method, a function, a report, a HANA SQL script, a transformation rule, because we are not working alone. It is not that you have an other developer who is isolated. We have a lot of colleagues who are doing different things in the IT department, and it is an idea to have this in order and have a structure on this and to be able to draw diagrams, to communicate. You can add comments to this and to simplify and to materialize the meta model. And what do you do with at the end? You show something in New York.
I'm the time cop. So.
Okay. I added some links, and by the way, SourceTrail, it's extremely cheap. It's a commercial tool. It is for C, C++, and Java. Private license 30 euros, commercial 180 euros. So everyone can buy this. Done by Ebert Data in Salzburg. This, for instance, is a related tool. It is professional. It can be used to understand Java and C and C++ coding already. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryder. That was a Punktlandung. And now we'd like to have all eyes on Brigitte here for another business yoga session. Please stand up.
So once again, keep your feet on the ground. Relax your knees. Forward your toes. And relax the shoulders. So we will do now a very important exercise for the eyes. So please put down your glasses. Throw it away. We will look up, left, down, right, up, right, down, left, up, right, left, down, down, right, up, right, left, 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 up, and left, down. So clap your hands. Rub very, and then put your hands on the eyes and your fingers on the forehead. Enjoy. And down with your hands. One thumb up. Please look at your nose. Thumb far away. Thumb, nose. Thumb far away. Faster. And tap your heads. Hand on the eyes. Relax the shoulders. The head. Enjoy. And move your hands down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have a break now. Just a reminder, everyone, the drinks are free, so all refreshments are free in these breaks, so please help yourself to coffee and cold drinks. And we'll see you back here in the arena at 10:45. Thank you.
Ja, schon, aber
da die Autofokusfelder alle aktiv. Das muss man stellen. Wieder verbunden sind.
Das wird eh immer ganz. Ja, was ist so stimmt, das ist nee, das ist weiß. Das passt eigentlich schon so genau. Ja, aber dann feststellen.
Ja. Ja, vor allem ist es halt auch so,
I tried to reach out. Unfortunately, some people we will find the solution because my PC does.
Yeah.
So, for the next talk, we should introduce Kathi, and she will pitch her session, which will be out of the no, she needs just to like this is one star because of the experimental program. And I don't know how we use the subscription for the space where post it and put your name on. I'm sure you.
Ja, ja, aber wir Fleisch.
Nein, jetzt.
Ich glaube, nur die Uhrzeit bestellt. Wollte er verstehen? Er wollte das verstehen. Ja, sind aber irgendwann so. Ja, also das ist, glaube ich, gar nicht so. Ja, wenn du einen knappen Art hast, dann ist es der sagt, nimm eines von den Feldern. Genau. Du wirst ja eigentlich genau eins auswählen, nämlich das du hinziehst. Das habe ich nur auf das Kiesen hier gehabt. Ich habe zwei beim Kiesen.
bisschen ein Problem, da müssen wir uns noch eine Verlängerung
Ich habe da nicht einfach zwei Worte, zwei Männer zum Kopf. Ich habe hinter zwei Künstler mit auch das
Entweder so oder so. Genau, wenn der mittleren, den man wählt, dann nimmt halt immer den mittleren und sucht sich dann selber denjenigen.
klar, das ist gleich bleibt Qualität. Das ist der Vielfalt
Okay.
Ja, jetzt sind Sie on the air.
Kannst du auch mal bleiben?
Und da kannst du es entweder in die Hosentasche oder du drückst es so, wenn dich das nicht stört, dann tust du in die Jackentasche. Genau, ich habe es jetzt wieder gemutet.
Okay.
Genau. Passt. Genau. Und du,
brauchst du auch
dir
für
ist
die
bewusst, wir
Aufzeichnung,
haben,
oder?
genau, wir haben eine Live-Übertragung. Ist okay?
Ach, ja, das ist okay. Da haben wir kein Problem mit. Nee, es ging mir nur darum, weil sonst, wenn es nur darum geht, hier den Raum zu beschallen, das würde ich, glaube ich, mit meinem eigenen Organ.
Bei 100 Leuten ist es besser einfach.
Ja.
Ganz entspannt. Gut. Genau. Reddy, hast du noch was zu trinken?
Okay.
Kannst du auch die Spiegel aufmachen?
Wenn man so arbeitet, nicht darauf einstellt, Beispielverladung sein.
Ja, jetzt behalten wir. Ich muss dir was sagen.
Wegschmeißen, nächstes Jahr ist eh wieder alles anders.
Ups!
Autsch!
Na, Peter!
Jetzt noch mehr.
Liegt da noch viel Spaß? Ja,
Das ist nur, es war nur eine Tasse. Nur Porzellan.
Ich glaube, das erste 2013, da muss ich bin Selbstständiger. BI, Data Warehouse. Ich sage immer, einer hat immer gesagt, auch ein schöner Begriff, Scheiß, beim Kunden. Aber ich kann auch sagen, Data Analyst ist eine neue Data Scientist. Ja, das ist Big Data, das ist es hier. Ich mache das alte Data Warehouse. Projektmanagement. Ich bin jetzt wieder technischer Architekt.
Nicht streichen. Nicht streichen. Nicht streichen. Sonst schreit's. Nicht streichen. Nein.
So I already rang the cowbell a few minutes ago, so if you're not in the arena yet, come on in. It's 10:45. We need to get started again. And before we go to our next speaker, I'd like to introduce a key sponsor of this SAP Inside Track events, the SAP Mentor Program, and the key driver behind the program is Katja Fischer, who's going to come up on the stage and tell you a little bit about what she has planned for us today.
Hello. I'm Katja Fischer. I'm the program manager of the Sub Mentors program. So I lead this pack of wonderful 170 geeks and nerds and other beautiful people. And I'm very happy that we can support the Sub Inside tracks. Thank you. And the Sub Inside tracks are growing, by the way, this year, and next year we will have even more. In other funny cities, like I heard, Vienna, and this year in Paris, and this year we had the first time a Sub Inside track in Bogota. So even covered countries like Peru, and so it's not only in Munich. So if you have time to come to other Sub Inside tracks, and also Sub Inside track in Waldorf on 20th of January, where we will also have a Learn, Hack and Play Day. So it's a play day for adults. Not what you think. I'll explain you later a little bit more details. Okay, so later at 1:15 I'm going to hold a little session about, not a session, it is a design thinking workshop, a challenge, 90 minutes, about diversity in sub-community. Oh, diversity. Gender diversity, how boring. No, I mean diversity is not only about gender diversity, right? We have diversity of thought, we have diversity of tenor, you have introvert, extrovert people. So let's find out a little bit more what we can do to support diversity in our community. That's it. 1:15. Thank you.
So there'll be a sign-up board out in the break area for all the open space sessions today, and the diversity workshop will be one of them. Now to introduce our next speaker, Volker Stoffel is a, I'm saying it, Volker Stoffel.
Volker Stoffel is great.
Close enough, okay. Is a RDBMS, sorry.
Relational management system.
My glasses. Veteran of 30 years of experience, and more than 15 years of that experience has been with Sybase products. And after Sybase was merged into SAP, his mission was to introduce the former Sybase products into both the SAP internal community and the customer base. And meanwhile, he's offering technology-oriented support for these products, which are now part of the SAP portfolio as an independent consultant. And the title of his presentation for us today is SAP IQ, Business Intelligence and Vertical Data Processing with 8 gigabytes of RAM or less.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk here about this subject. Coming back to Kati's diversity, I'm a little bit off the mainstream here, I'm afraid, but I hope you will like it nonetheless because it's really technology focused. So SAP, who has heard about SAP IQ at least as a phenomenon? Okay, that's some of them. I hope I'll be able to get a few of the others interested. I'll start with what IQ is in a nutshell, what makes IQ eligible for big data scenarios, because that's one part where IQ is actually also part of the SAP solution offering and solution landscape. And I'll hope to be able at the end to demonstrate a bit about ad hoc queries. Now, to be able to run ad hoc queries, I need to build up a database first. And I'll start with that and leave it running while we will talk, or while I will introduce what's going on in here. It starts with the creation of a database. I'm working here on a Windows platform. It's a rather old computer. It has this 8 GB that I've mentioned. It has 2 cores, which makes it somewhat less impressive, because I'll talk a lot about parallelization and scalability. So what we do is we create a database, an IQ database, by starting with the handle. That's an operating system file. It actually technically is a SQL Anywhere database, and it's used to store the metadata, and will then provide some space for the persistent vertical-oriented data, the ones that we want to do our business intelligence queries against, and a temporary store, which is used to keep work tables and everything that is transient. It could be explicit temporary tables, but mostly it's about work tables to keep the intermediate results of calculations. I'll start this by running a shell script. So this is executed already within an IQ engine with a virtual database that is required to have a starting point. I could also use a real existing database, but the clean approach is to start with nothing. And we'll get some feedback now, what's going on. And after a few more seconds, we'll have an empty database. The next thing that we're going to do with this empty database is that's not the one that I wanted. That's just setting a couple of options. That's not very interesting, and I'll go not into much detail here. The important part here is we are going to create a user store. I'm working with the IQ Express edition, which is available for free after having registered. It's somewhat more restricted than the HANA XE. We have a limit of 5 gigabytes of persistent data. And I've started with a very small part of system persistent data store already, and these two containers here make up for those 5 gigabytes minus what I've already used for the system data store. And I've a couple of, actually it's just one service procedure, which also should not be of too much interest. So next step is this one. I'm now starting a new engine, so I can start it on demand in a real server environment. It will be running as a service, or on the Unix world as a daemon process. So it's not tied to a user session. And the next step that's going on here already is to create the tables. So give you a quick glance of that. So that's the create table statement. And for those who are familiar with SQL, it should look very familiar, except here for one detail. That's the IQ unique clause. It's an optional clause, and I use it here for improvement, and I'll give you a few comments of that later on. It is a very wide table. It is originated from data that is available on as part of the Open Data Initiative by the US Transport Agency. It's about flight data of US domestic flights. And with our 5 gigabytes, I'll be loading, with this setup, 8 years worth of data. That's 50 million rows. of this very wide table, and we'll still be able to run ad hoc queries against this. Yeah, if it's interesting, I can also show what the load data size is. And then there are a couple of indexes, and here is a specialty that we have some index types that you're probably not familiar with, LF and HNG. There also is a date index. But apart from that, it's also very normal SQL syntax. And meanwhile, the guy has finished. And the next step will be to start populating. And I'm loading the files by the year, starting with the year 2003. I have one load file for each month. And we'll have a look later on about the progress. So, getting back to theory, what is IQ all about? It's a purebred data warehouse engine designed for very large databases. It utilizes a columnless data store like HANA does, but unlike HANA, it is not a hybrid system. It's really only working with the vertical engine, and it stores data on disk, and then, like most other RDBMSs, keeps the hottest part of the data inside RAM using a cache approach. We have very powerful data compression mechanisms built in. The figures are similar to HANA. Actually, I've seen one case where IQ is better than HANA, but basically, in data compression, but basically they can be considered roughly equivalent. They can be integrated, and the most common use case from the SAP application world is the nearline storage extension to SAP Business Warehouse, where IQ can be used to keep the colder data of the Business Warehouse in the cheaper IQ database to focus and restrict the HANA database to only the hottest data that are required for the business intelligence. And they can be then used together. Business Warehouse has the logic to merge and organize and brokerage the various requests between the two data sources and fix the data together. Some terms, I'll keep it short. Cardinality will be a very important term. That's the number of unique or distinct column values for a given column. And the other thing is optimized fast projection. That's the IQ term for dictionary compression. We are using here pretty much the same approach as HANA does. So if we have repeating values in a data column, we will build up a kind of metadata lookup table where each distinct value is shown once and then mapped to a small number. Depending on the cardinality, it is bitwise, so if we have a column with a cardinality of 8, like the year column that we have here, we're covering 8 years. So these 8 years will be stored in the metadata table, and in the actual column vector, where the actual data is stored, we don't write 2005. There just is the information. This is number 3, position number 3 in the lookup table, which can be stored in 3 bits, 0 to 7. We have our 8 positions covered. And that makes the column vector extremely lean. Bitmap index is the leanest form of vertical data structures. Since a data row does not exist as a memory entity at some point, because it's distributed over all the columns that the table has, there is just an offset position or row ID, which indicates the value for row number 5311 in this column means lookup position number 3. And we can implement certain predicates as bitmaps, where we just have one bit for each row in the table. And if the bit is set, it means that this predicate is satisfied, and if it's 0, it means it isn't. And that's what will be our approach for the low fast or LF indexes. A little bit about the unlimitedness of IQ. Like everything in IT, there are limits, but they are still out of range. We have a bulk mechanism to acquire data, and that is a good point to look back here. So I've loaded, or the machine has loaded the 6.5 million rows in a bit less than 2 minutes, and the next set of 7 million rows in a bit more than 2 minutes, and it's now working on the 3rd year. You see here at the bottom, the machine is busy. That's not very spectacular for a 2-core machine, but it also works for a 12-core machine because it can be, at least the relevant part can be executed in parallel. So it's fast. The world record for loading data, that was back in 2014. I'm not quite sure if there has been some new values, but I think it's impressive enough. They have loaded 34.3 terabytes in 1 hour. It will be parallel processed. We're running on standard hardware, and we have a lot of sources. What I'm using here is ASCII files, the most common source that we have in IT. And quickly, how this is executed. We have a row-oriented tabular result set, data file, data pipe. It will be transformed into vertical, where dictionary compression is applicable, it will be applied. There is a second level of compression, which we call storage compression, to write the data to disk. And additional indexes will be created. The lookup table size depends on column data type and cardinality. The maximum cardinality that we can cover with optimized fast projection with lookup tables is 2 to the power of 31. The real limit where this mechanism is useful frequently is lower, depending on size of data, machine, and other factors. Data store also can be considered unlimited. We can have an arbitrary number of containers. Each of them can be 4 terabytes in size. It is possible to organize the database for different kinds of storage layers, so we can have our own temperature management inside IQ. We can say we have hot data that is in the fastest persistent storage, and we have cold data that is on something that is cheaper. And as I said, it's integrated into the various SAP showcases where it makes sense to use it. We can have up to 2 to the power of 48 minus 1 rows per table. In decimal, that's a 15-digit number, so it's not really unlimited, but quite close to it. The table size is only limited by the database size and, of course, this figure, and a couple of other numbers that I won't focus too much upon. Yes, so there's some extension. The very large database option is available, and I'll just skip that. So our database will look like, except for the switch to, flip tip that we'll go through. We have a temporary store. We have, first of all, the catalog store, which is, as I said, the hook of the whole thing. The catalog store, among others, contains the information where the locations are for the other stores. We have a system main store, that's the one that I've created initially, the user data store that I've created in the second step. And we can have more of them if we have this very large database option. Otherwise, it's by license restricted to one user data store. And we see the command elements that reflect this. System main store is what shows as the IQ path. The catalog store is the file that is the hook in the very first line of the create database statement. Temporary store is directed as the temporary path. All IQ stores, the main and the temporary store, can be raw devices on platforms where this is supported, or can be file system devices. The catalog store always is a file system file. Now we create the user data store, and then we have these indexes. And here we see the IQ unique clause. And if you remember, I said IQ unique 0, and that was the RID, that was the primary key for that specific table. So I know this column will not have repeating values. Basically, what I can do with the IQ unique clause is I can give IQ and estimate what I expect the cardinality of the column to be. So we are saving sometimes as the database is populated, because it doesn't have to be escalated bit by bit as the cardinality grows up with new data. Here, I want to say this has no repeating values at all, so I say IQ unique 0, and that means I do not have a lookup table. The plain value is stored in the column vector, because I'm not going to save anything, and that's actually an advantage over HANA, at least as far as I know. Oh, okay. It took too much of my battery.
So now we check resilience now. Powerless resilience. Let's see. I didn't check your power level. Does it come up?
Not yet. I think that was the plan. It doesn't seem to charge actually.
Push mal Folder.
Ganz egal.
Strom sollte drauf sein. Ich habe da auch meins gerade geladen.
Here we go again. Ja.
So. Genau. What will happen to the database?
We'll see. Actually, I told you it's not supposed to happen.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. IQ in the past was part of sci-fi mobile platform.
No,
but now
not
what's
really.
happened now with sci-fi?
It's back.
You just mentioned is an
Yeah.
open platform.
Kannst du nochmal von vorne anfangen?
Ich hab's leider nicht. Okay.
Ja, wir haben 5 Minuten zu spät angefangen. Du hast noch 10.
So, IQ is still available as a technology platform, as part of the SAP portfolio. And it is part of various SAP solution or application bundles, like the NLS extension for BW. And there are also, I think, business object editions which come with a bundled-in IQ license. So, and it's still available on the price list as just the software, the plain software license for existing customers or for all customers who want to use their self-grown, self-developed applications, their third-party applications. I think it has went on. Yes, it has.
Yeah, continues.
So it's all stable. And meanwhile, I will have a quick look at what's going on inside. So while the data loads, we still can start querying them. Yes?
I would have a question. You
Sure.
were last speaking on cardinality.
Yes.
And cardinality on rows. Is that
On columns.
what you have predefined before?
No, I only have it predefined in the case of that primary key column. To instruct IQ, there will never be a repeating value at all. That's the only preparation that I have made. I can do it, and in earlier versions of IQ, it was not required but helpful. Starting with version 16, where we have this bitwise escalation of lookup tables, it's not urgent anymore, and you're usually very fine with just specifying nothing and letting the whole thing grow. Because in older versions, it used to jump bytewise, which made it quite an operation to update it. In version 16, we're just going bitwise, and so usually the default behavior is fine. Okay. Now I have a predefined query. The system is, I hope, still running, yes. What am I doing here? First of all, I've encapsulated all with rollback. That's because IQ uses snapshot isolation. And if I keep a read transaction open for a long time, first of all, I don't get the most recent data, and later on, I'm forcing IQ to keep different snapshot versions, which is especially painful when I'm loading while querying the database. And I'm really going to fill that 5 gigabytes that we have. So that's the reason for wrapping the whole thing with rollbacks. This is one of the classic queries that IQ is perfect for. Calculate grouped totals and grouped averages. You see here, this is an OLAP extension to SQL, the rollup aggregation, which is part of the SQL dialect that is used in IQ. And the other stuff is some metadata, and I think I'll just leave this out for the moment because we won't have the time to cover it anyway. And go for it. Still loading. Machine is still kind of busy loading.
But now it's not busy anymore.
No, doesn't look busy anymore, that's right. Does it get into some struggle afterwards? Checkpoint, it's going on.
Okay.
So,
fetching rules.
Well, so now we see 35 million rows are in the system so far. The execution time was 1.5 seconds for 25 million rows on that bit of hardware, while it is actually busy loading. So if you have an arbitrary piece of hardware where you can achieve similar response times with the traditional database systems, I like to see that. And that goes on. In the end, we will have some 50 million data rows. I have also prepared a variant of that where I have left out all the extra indexes that were consuming significant space and just stripping it to those who are extremely cheap and who I used for that particular query. And I could load 100 million rows and some into these 5 gigabytes. And still getting, where is my presentation, by the way?
This one is gone.
That's the one that's gone.
So, how many rows were you calculating? Because you're still loading, right?
Yes. As I said, this goes up to 50 million rows, and I could stop it at any time because I have actually 3 prepared databases that are fully populated. 3 prepared databases because one that's with my full set of indexes, and one that does not have the declared primary key as a unique index, which is very space consuming. And finally, the one that has only the very least set of indexes that are very cheap or strictly required for this query. And then, as I said, I can load up to 100 million rows into that into that container. I've held an extended version of this on TechEd 3 years ago. It was a 2-hour hands-on session, and with a full data set, we could start working on the completely populated database after 75 minutes about. I mean, the challenge is not really the loading time. I think I have shown that it loads fast, and there's other evidence that it does load fast. The funny part should be the speed in evaluation. And just here's the ad hoc queries, and that's one thing that I really want to show you. We have a couple of columns here. That's not the table that I'm using. We have various columns with a rather small cardinality. They are lookup values. And we have our value column. And what we'll do is we'll create bitmaps for these. So for each status value, we have one bitmap where the corresponding row number is set. The bit for the corresponding row number is set to 1, same for the geography and same for the product line. And now to evaluate this, we can first of all operate pipeline, so we can start processing intermediate results before they have been completed, and we can go for massive parallel. We can use our restriction, and we will have resulting bitmaps of which rows are interesting for us and which rows belong to which subset or which group of the group aggregations. And I think really...
1 minute?
1 more minute left, okay. The other part is we can also calculate the sums and the averages bitwise by splitting this value into bit vectors where each bits of the same value are represented by 1 bit column. So rather than processing the data like this, we have these 5 bits that make up 23, and then we add 11 and 17 and so on. We are going that way, and we are running vertical first, and then combine the vertical intermediate results into the final results. This is completely independent of each other. So if we have a 16-bit integer value, we can have 16 threads independent of each other, each processing 1 bit value, one bit vector. And finally, the result will be just the addition of these 16 intermediate values. That's what makes it extremely fast and extremely scalable. If you will have a look at the slides, which I will publish on the website, you can have a closer look at this, but I think here the essential stuff is covered now.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes?
One question. How because we are working with HANA, and we have really poor performance when it comes to joins on several columns. So if we have several tables, connecting them and joining them on several different columns,
Yes.
HANA gets really, really slow, also compared to a normal row store.
Okay.
How does IQ, is it a good scenario to think about joining tables, or would you put all together in one table?
Basically, joining tables is something that is decently covered, but if you're joining on combined sets of columns, it has a tendency to be tricky. And I have to admit that I don't have any real comparison with a reasonable amount of data for that showcase. We used to have something in IQ that was not used anymore, which would have been a very powerful feature for this, but expensive to maintain, which is called the so-called join index, where for a given join condition, IQ was actually maintaining a matrix of row IDs from one and the other table that were matching, which is an extreme shortcut compared to the traditional index processing, but it was abandoned in favor of some new extension that allows for more continuously ongoing data provisioning. I think these two were missing. Yes?
My idea is joining two big tables is a problem. Joining a big and a small table is not a problem. Correct. But if you join two big tables, then we have problems.
There are mechanisms for either way. Yeah. If we use large tables with a large number of rows, we typically should use something like called merge join, which is rather robust for a large number of rows. If we are executing this in the typical nested loop approach, and that's probably what you mean, you're absolutely right. We're going to get in trouble because the number of matching rows from either table will be multiplied. Okay. So the join is not something that IQ has been particularly optimized for, except for one thing. You really could consider in IQ to denormalize your data so that you have to execute fewer joins. You could, for example, use your order positions and extend each single row with the relevant information from the order, from the main order entity. Because if you don't use them in a query, they don't matter. You're just using those columns that you are using in that particular query. And if they are repeating values, which in a hierarchy is the case, they are quite good in being compressed because they have a lot of repeating values. So it really, one approach if it comes to performance of joins is to simply materialize them. And in many situations, the benefit will definitely outweigh the extra cost that you have. We'll have some preparation. I know it hurts. I'm a database consultant for a very long time, and it hurts to see anything that is not third normal form. But in IQ, there are situations where it does make sense.
So, I hate to be the bad time cop here. Thank you, Volker.
And of course, feel free to ask any more questions while you see me
in the breaks
roaming around. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Volker. And wanted to suggest, since we're running a little bit behind schedule, that we skip the break now, but we will have a word quickly from Martin Fischer about his giveaways from Bridging IT. We're going to have a demo here. And so Bridging IT is one of our main sponsors every year, and Martin
Gold sponsor.
Gold sponsor. There we go.
Okay, thanks. So, sorry, that was a bit too close. I brought some giveaways which are branded with Bridging IT, of course, and there are some card decks out there on the table laying there and waiting for you. But I saw some confused faces in the break before, so I thought maybe I can explain it, what those cards are. So those are planning poker cards, and for those of you who are familiar with Scrum and do planning poker, so they might help you. So if you are a team of 4, one card deck is the amount of cards you need, because there are cards with numbers for people. If you're a team of 8, feel free to take 2 of them. So yeah, that's it.
Just one quick word. So we saw that Martin is from Bridging IT. Can I, just so everybody knows who's from our sponsors or who's representing them today, who's from Ecosio? Will you raise your hand? Philip. Yeah. Passport. Ta-da! And Inspiricon.
Also.
Yours. And we've got Kadaxo. It's 4. Yeah, actually I got speakers. And of course, SAP Mentors.
Yeah.
Katya, Progressive.
We had
Falco. Falco is somewhere, is in the house. And CQSE from the back. And Computer Service Wolf again. Soul Unity is represented. And MatchCon.
Damir.
Outside.
Damir's in the house somewhere, but he's also our Schatzmeister and our main sponsoring connection here. Schmidsys.com. And IT Luffelholz.
Yeah, Alex is not here. Okay. Our hearts are with him.
Yeah, he's excused, yeah. And
we have to get it.
Mike Meister. Our next sponsor, who's also going to lead us in another yoga sana, is Brigitte Felsman. And regarding both Mike and Brigitte, please feel free to tweet your little hearts out about them. They're doing a great job being here for us today. So Brigitte, the stage is yours.
So please stand up. Keep your feet on the ground. Relax your knees. Forward your pelvis. Open your heart. Relax your shoulders. So, the magic thing of yoga is to do the exercises slowly, like sex. And and so we will move forward our left shoulder and go behind with our right shoulder. Let's follow. Slowly. But don't move your body, only the shoulders. So we will begin to move our right shoulder forward, and our left shoulder backward. Very good. So once again, left shoulder forward, right shoulder backward. A little bit more. And last time, right shoulder forward, left shoulder backward. Come to the middle again. And we will rotate the shoulders. Backwards and forwards. Very good. Thank you.
There's no break.
So sorry to keep you all here. Just such a nice, relaxing segment for Rita.
Let's give 5 minutes restroom break.
Okay, 5 minutes for the restroom, and we'll see you back here punctually so we can catch up on our time. Thank you.
Gregor?
Ja?
Hast du schon mal was mit Bluetooth LE gehabt?
Direkte Kommunikation? Mehr als zum Beispiel für den Raspberry Pi des Bluetooth-Keyboards. Ja, aber so nicht. Was hast du denn auch jetzt?
Ich habe einen Grillthermometer daheim. Das hat 6 Anschlüsse. Steige ich hin. Und das liegt jetzt eigentlich, weil du nur eine Android-App hast, die vergisst halt gerne ihre Daten. Also wenn du ihn neu startest, sind die Daten halt weg. Und jetzt will ich halt sozusagen die Daten abziehen über den Pi und halt die im Hintergrund in der Datenbank speichern und dann halt sozusagen.
Und die Verbindung zum Pi kriegst du schon hin?
Ja, weil das halt alles auf Protokollebene ist. Also ich muss, da kannst du nicht einfach sagen, ich gebe jetzt die Connection da und dann gibt er die Daten, sondern du musst wirklich sagen,
ich auch ansprechen,
du musst ihm auch ansprechen. Genau, du musst es sozusagen sagen, bitte in dem Bereich, den du Value reinschreiben, dass er dir auch was zurück.
Hat das jemand schon implementiert?
Ich habe die Firma auch angeschrieben und hat gesagt, nein, sie können mir natürlich den Source Code nicht geben. Ich habe auch keine. Ich habe schon alles sozusagen reverse engineert, aber so. Wollte fragen, ob du vielleicht noch.
Vielleicht gibt es da was Interessantes. Gibt es quasi Network-Sniffer?
Ja, habe ich. Also ich habe Bluetooth. Also du kannst in deinen Entwicklungsumgebung, also in den ganz normalen Entwickler-Tools, kannst sagen, Loopback, dann schreibt er dir alle Befehle, die er rausschickt. Die kannst du in einen Wireshark reinschieben. Das ist super neat. Also ich kriege die ganzen auf das geil ist. Ich habe auch Windows entwickelt, also ich habe gemacht, also für diesen Plugin dann, das heißt Node, also Node oder so. Damit kann ich dann zugreifen auf die Hardware, habe ich unter Windows gemacht, dann musst du erstmal auch deinen kompletten Treiber rauskriegen für dein Bluetooth-Device, den komplett neu rein. Da konnte ich unter Windows mit dem kommunizieren, aber ich konnte ihn auch so weit machen, dass er sich mit mir connectet und auch für Minuten bleibt, nur es gibt mir seine Daten nicht raus. Also irgendwie zieht es irgendwie nicht diese.
Oh, ich glaube, die helfen sich gerade selber.
Die Notification kriegt diese nicht. Ja, vielleicht hast du schon mal sowas gemacht, weil du ja immer mit so kleinen.
Ja, das schon, aber nee. Gut, da ist halt meistens an den GPIO-Ports hast du dann direkt einfach den Temperatursensor dran oder andere Sensoren. Also ich habe ja meine 2 Feinstabsensoren auch und genau, aber nee.
Weil ich jetzt auch mal hingehen wollte und sagen, ja, das Gerät kostet sozusagen nur 60 € und das alles selber rausgeht, auch so selbst Bauprojekte dann, aber die kosten dann, wenn du die Teile einzeln kaufst, 200 €, weil ich einfach diese Bluetooth-Signale abzapfen und ja, mal.
So einfach wär's, gell? Das ist ja eigentlich in der Luft.
Ist ja eigentlich Standard.
Genau, ihr habt euch schon verkabelt.
We are working on it. We are working on it.
Kommunikation zu machen. Sie wollten es elektronisch machen. Das WLAN, das gibt es das Ding nicht überhaupt hätte ich was verschickt, das Einzige, was ich habe dann SMS geschickt. SMS ist was? An den Server und dann irgendwie. Das war dann die Challenge, mir die Endpoint also zuerst habe ich aber gar nicht vorgeguckt. Okay, aber ich meine. Aber das ist ja auch immer die neueste Version.
Yeah, I know. Me too. So I switched the source. So.
Wo wir gerade versuchen, sozusagen Fördertechnik anzubinden, SAP über die neuen Analogstände komplett. Fördertechnik.
Should work.
So can I have everyone's attention? Please come back to the arena. I haven't rung the bell. Maybe someone could ring it over there. Get everybody back into the arena so that we can start again. While you're gathering here, I just want to mention to everyone to take a look at the back of the room here at what Mike Meister has put together for us already here with his graphic recording. It's fantastic. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting to see the Zwischenstadien, these time points in between as he's developing it. Please go ahead and stand up and take a picture. Yeah. You can take a picture of this stage because it keeps evolving. We have more talks, and they'll continue to be continue to be recorded in the next panel. Yeah, one panel is already full. My goodness. And and please also feel free to tweet your pictures about Mike. I believe your Twitter handle is at @mm_Mike Meister, written together. Yeah. So @mm_Mike Meister, written together. Yeah. And maybe some people already have good photos of our yoga sanas. So Brigitta's Twitter handle, if you couldn't see it on the slide before, it's @Brigitta_yoga. So any and all tweets are much appreciated. Yeah. And so I think everybody is, thank you, Brigitta. So we're almost all together again here in the arena. And we need to get started with the next presentation. So we have so many technical introductions here, I have to read it. So our next speakers are Frank van der Plaas. Sounds Dutch. Is it Dutch? Oh, cool. And Michael Kowalczewski. Close enough? Yeah, Michelle? Yeah, very good. So Frank and Michael are integration architects from one of our sponsors today, Int4. In their daily work, they build application interfaces to exchange data to and from SAP systems. In their presentation, they plan to show us their unique concept and solution for automated testing of complex integration scenarios. So you've all had another cup of coffee. I think you're ready for this. And I'll turn the stage over to Frank and Michael. Danke.
Thank you. Okay, let's do some volume control here. I will try not to speak too loud. So if it's too loud, please let me know. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here and to present. So far, we really have enjoyed it. I think a lot of very good presentations we have seen. We also presented at SIT in Berlin, and the first question there, when we asked it, what was done in the first presentation already, how many ABAP developers are there? Besides us, there was only one person raising his hands. Here I can see we have ABAP developers. So I think it makes more sense what we present because it's probably something you're all familiar with, SAP application interfaces. So that's what our presentation is about. What is the complexity and how have we dealt with it and how can we automate and manage regression testing? So what I will do, I'll give a short welcome, then I want to explain with very abstract slides the concept of our INT4 application interface testing approach. Then hopefully after 4 or 5 slides you're not too bored, then we're going to make it more interesting. Then my colleague Michael will do a presentation. He will show you our cloud platform integrator solution for regression testing and also the PO regression testing solution. After that we have time for questions and I'll be around also later for any questions. So who we are, INT4, we founded in Poznan, Poland, just over the border. We are having an integration style from the start that we always believed in one phase for one interface. So as you all know, in integration there's a lot of different technology and technology components. And if you look in development teams, you always see everybody is focused on one specific component. And from the start we really had something, all our consultants need to be able to manage the whole integration pipeline. They need to be able to design it, to develop it and to test it. So that brought us also to the main point, driven by Michael Kravchek, one of our own sub-mentors in the IEF and PO space in 2012, that we started on the first blueprint from how can we come up with a concept that everybody can test integration scenarios in SAP. Yeah, it's not only unit testing of a small component, but how can we manage that? So we have been working on it, on a product for that, on a solution and a concept for that, and we have brought that to the market in the last year now. We have used it at several customers already, and now we bring it commercially to the market. Besides doing this kind of stuff, we have Michael Kravchek together with a couple of other colleagues from us producing a lot of books. We're sharing a lot of knowledge, not only in the sub-mentor program, but also in articles and books that we write around integration. There's always the interesting part. So this is where you need to come up with all these beautiful slides about the millions and millions you save with whatever automated testing tool. But I think if you look at integration in application interfaces, then there's one important concept, and I think it doesn't matter what the relative cost unit is that you apply here. Depending on the cost of your tool, you can change it. I think the most important part here is that the earlier you find a defect, the cheaper it is to fix. Yeah? So let's look to a very simple interface scenario. The moment that I have a defect and I find it 3 days after go live, it's not only fixing the defect, what the cost is, but it's your correction program. It is running that, it's maybe communicating with customers again. Most important of all, your business is losing trust in what you deliver. Yeah, so there is almost no price ticket I can put on losing this trust. Yeah, so I think the story really is we need to find a way to find defects in interfaces as early as possible. So we need to make testing, end-to-end testing in interfaces accessible for everybody. And not having them all the time that they need to go in all kind of legacy systems, but make sure we can do that testing so that we save time and in the end we save cost and we restore quite a lot of trust then. Yeah. So if I look at a very simple SAP landscape, let's keep it very standard, SAP-centric. We have our sub-PO as integration layer, maybe SOA manager also, we have some direct web services. We have all our applications and all our trading partners connected to it. And now we all running into the cloud and it's all much better and it's all solved and there are no issues anymore. But in the end, you still SAP, you still sub-centric, you still have your on-premise or private cloud solution and you have been developing interfaces there for a long time. So also the sub-cloud platform integrator with all the applications in the cloud, we have the same story there. The only thing that you see right now is that the landscape is expanding. Yeah? But in the end, we still have the same interfaces that we use in our sub-business suite, if it's S4HANA or if it's what you currently have on-premise. So if we break it down, and now I'm going to use a few slides, very abstract, a lot of nice blocks, at least we like them. I hope you share the same enthusiasm as me also for it. But if you look very simple to an application interface, yeah, we have an ABAP backend, whatever it is, we have there our business documents, our sales orders, we have all our function modules, BAPIs, and all our customization around it, what we have built up over the years. And I have external systems, partners, cloud-based, legacy systems, where we have processing that we need to interface. Yeah, so if I look on the SAP side, over time, we have built up a whole series of different integration technologies. Yeah? And we only add to it. We're not replacing, but we're adding to it. So over time, you have quite a lot of different integration technology that you can choose. And also you find duplications, because you do a new project team is coming on, and they have the silver bullet, they're only going to use enterprise services. But in the end, they reuse everything that you have. Yeah? Then all those integration technologies publish messages defined by SAP or defined by yourself, which have a whole set of messages there. Yeah? And then you have your middleware layer, where you create an external message one-to-one with your external system. So that's a very straightforward concept. But already you see here the complexity, the more I go from the left to the right that I introduce. And now we have a new layer to organize our whole SAP backends. Yeah? We are going to introduce AIF so that it brings all the technology together. More important, we're going to now apply, coming back to the first presentation, BRF Plus decision tables in our interfaces. Yeah, later on a little bit more about it, but we put an IEF over it so that we have additional frameworks in place where we can put validations and rules and actions in. Of course, back, I think, in the picture is the whole gateway again with everything we do in cloud. Also an interface. And now we also bring in an SAP Cloud Platform, where also, as you can see, we bring in another middleware layer. So if I make a more abstract overview than this of it, then it's all still very straightforward. And this is also how we look at integration. You have your external processing systems, cloud-based or on-premise or at customers. You have an external message. You have different layers of middleware now. You have a SAP PO. You have a cloud platform integrator. Then you have your set of more business like SAP messages. Then you have these 8 different interface technologies. You have your customization before you come into your business document, into your sales order. And that is the whole pipeline that you have in your integration scenario. So that's where we see then also the challenge. And if I put the short description, I think I already introduced it, but basically the complexity increased because of the reuse. And we have built everything in our ABAP backends to reuse components. Yeah? It's not a one-to-one, point-to-point integration. We use a sales order here. Maybe I have one sales order here and I have 100 or 500 external systems with business partners and cloud apps that one way or the other creating or working on that sales order. So I have a reuse where there I have a single function on that side. Here I'm going to reuse everything. And that also makes it interesting and challenging for testing. How am I going to test that? Because one change here can affect 50 interfaces in the end on the other side. Yeah? And that's what you see as the testing challenge. There's a lot of technology components involved. Because we do a lot of reuse, we need to make sure that we continuously regression test. The biggest challenge you always see is, where do I get the data from? Every time when I want to quickly test an interface, do I just throw some production data against it, or do I quickly edit some data and use that? So that's a real challenge. And we need to make sure also that we manage, if we have done a good test, very often what you see, you do a good test scenario, and then you lose it because you make changes. So you need to make sure you manage those test sets properly and that you can maintain them. So then if I look at the scope that we have for INT4, for IFTT, what I already defined, that is the integration pipeline as we see it. To test your external system or also your backend, your UIs, you can use quite a lot of recording and playback solutions. Yeah, there are now more and more unit testing tools coming in, but they also only test one small component. Yeah, it's great that on the cloud platform we can do all this open source unit testing, but it's only one side of the interface. Who's going to look at this part here? Yeah, if I generate a sales order on a cloud platform and I post it, then I want to make sure that the posting is correct. Knowing that I send it correctly back and I get a sales order number back is not really the whole solution. So the different unit testing tools that we have only test a small part. And that brings it how we have defined it, that we say, okay, if you want to do integration testing, then you need to see the unit testing as testing the whole pipeline. So depending on the scenario that you have, if you use middleware, then you need to make sure you continuously test from your external message up till your business document and do the validation of that stream. And if that external message is on the cloud platform or coming from an external system, it doesn't matter. But that's what we see as our testing scope and where we want to work. So to do that, we have a unique concept how we define test cases, because the beauty with an interface is we know what goes in and what needs to come out. Yeah, so it's a very easy unit to manage from a testing point of view. The only thing is the message you need to put in have to be most of the time unique, because you apply so many validation rules that you cannot create duplicate messages or business documents. So where we start is we start with an interface configuration. Yeah? So we configure the interfaces, that's a one-off. So every interface you have in your SAP landscape, we configure once, and then with a single click you can start building your test cases. Yeah, you have one valid functional test where you have done a successful posting, then we can select that and build a test case. And then you can continuously run those test cases scheduled, or you can execute them yourself. And that's what we do, what we see as the test case processing. So if I go into detail there, to define an interface in IFTT, we collect the behavior rules. If it's an inbound, is it an outbound interface, synchronous, is there additional behavior that it requires an event trigger or anything like that. We have substitution rules, and that's very important. If you want to virtualize your external systems, you need to generate continuously new messages that you can inject or new events that you can trigger with some substitution rules for example, external reference number or for any other specific numbers. And then I think that's the strongest point. We have a set of validation rules around that interface definition. Validation rules, if I want to validate a sales order in ECC, which fields do I want to validate? So compared to the new posting and my reference set, you need to define all the fields that you want to validate, even the ones that may be not visible, or maybe fields in a specific Z table. That's what we put in the validation rules. Yeah. Then to create this test case, what I said, you do a single click, you select with our unique selector, or in the cloud platform integration environment, or in PO, you select your message, and then we collect automatically, we collect the interface definition, we collect the business document that we're going to use as a reference, and we collect the message that was injected in the middleware layer, if it's CPI or PO. We collect that whole set, and that is then used as your reference test case. The moment that you execute that, we execute it here, and what we will do is, when we execute this, we inject into the middleware layer the message. Then when it arrives back in SAP, we will validate the reference that we collected with the newly created document. And we apply those business rules to validate it, and then we store the results. So we can send it to you, or you can look at it. If you run daily tests and you see something is going wrong, you can check in the history. So that's what we do with the test cases. So this is maybe very abstract, very conceptual, how we look at the problem, how we see the scope of an interface integration pipeline, and how we have built test cases around that. So if I look to a test requirement for this example company, this is a very realistic scenario. Yeah? You have a couple of interfaces and systems and B2B partners connected to your PO. You interface with your ECC backend. We also now bring in a cloud platform. You maybe have a web shop that's using Shower Manager. And I think the example was very interesting earlier in the first discussion. So now what I will do, what happens if I change, one of my expert users changes a BRF plus table in IEF? What is the impact on all my interfaces? As you can see, I have this whole landscape there that is all creating and sending me sales orders if it comes via EDI, if it comes via my cloud shops, via my web shops, via any external systems. A part of them runs through IEF, a part not, so they can all be impacted. So a small change from an expert user, it's not only testing this one interface that he thinks it's relevant to, but it's regression testing the rest because there's a reuse that is applied. So to do that, our approach that we have been working on and where we see that we can really increase the testing productivity is that we virtualize all those systems, like I said. So all those systems that you normally use to quickly generate a message or where you want to copy from, you don't need them anymore. We have INT Force IFTT installed on ECC as an add-on, and then what we will do, we will generate, based on the references that we have, all the messages and inject them. Yeah? The moment that they inject it, we will validate it, and then we can tell you if it was valid or not. And of course, we are a certified add-on, so it's pretty easy to install it. You can remove it, and we only install on ECC. There's no component or any other ABAP backend. There's no component installed in the cloud or on PO or anywhere else. So that's a little bit our concept that we have for testing interfaces, how we look at test cases, and how we also have built our solution working sub-centric from your ABAP backend to test all your interfaces and not skip any of the middleware layers. To give you an idea how that works, and not only with slides, we're going to do an example right now of how the product works, where we will show first from a cloud integration scenario, and then also the impact on other scenarios if we need to regression test them. Michael?
Yes. So let me show how this solution works in practice. For that purpose, we will imagine that we will add a new application and new interface to our landscape, and we will create a test case for it that later on will be used for regression testing. The application that we implemented recently in our landscape is a cloud application for placing orders for our partner. Let's imagine that. This is the application. It is integrated via our S/4HANA backend with cloud platform integration. So this is cloud solution. And what I need to create such test case? First, what I need to create such test case that later on can be automated. First of all, I need to create my reference document. I need to test interface manually, log into the external system, trigger the interface, validate the results, and based on it, I will be able to create my test case for automatic runs. So let me use this web shop and add few products to the cart. This is my basket. These are quantities. Let me play with them. And right now, I will submit order to my S/4HANA backend via cloud platform integration interface. What I should expect, the sales order in ECC system should be created. As I said, this is cloud integration interface, so I should see this message in monitoring. I will log into cloud platform integration to the monitoring part. These are the messages from last hour, so it should be my message. Yes, this is correct time. So I expect that this interface creates a business document for me. In this case, this is sales order, so I should be able to see this order in the system. Let me look for it. Yes, it is here. The interface works. But what I need to do now, I need to validate that this is valid, so that this is the reference document that I can use for further test executions. Looks correct, same materials, same quantities, other fields looks fine. I can assume that this is my future test case. So what I need to do now, right now I will open our software, this is called IFTT, and we'll create this test case based on this particular flow. This is SAP add-on. This is how all test cases that are grouped according to external systems, to the interfaces, to the processes. I will create my test case in this folder, Subcloud Integration Testing. Let me add a new one. And what is the creation of the test cases we wanted to simplify as possible. So this would be just few clicks, few steps that will be able to create the test case for me. I will place some description. As Frank already told, our software supports different kinds of integration. This might be scenarios via process orchestration, via cloud platform integration, via direct interfaces via IAF, and so on and so on. This one is synchronous by cloud platform integration, so I need to choose it. And right now, I need to upload my message from middleware platform. So basically, for that purpose, the only information that I need is GUID of the message that was processed. This is log of the message, and somewhere here I should see the GUID. This is the GUID. Let me copy it into the clipboard. Paste it. And I don't need to specify validation rules, as they will be read centrally from IFTT configuration. So this is enough. I'm just saving this test case, and it is created for me. So basically, in the background, during this test case creation, the content of the message that was delivered from external system was fetched from middleware platform persistence, and it would be used for further execution. And it's kept together with the system with corresponding final document that was created from this interface, in our case, sales order. This was one way of creation the test cases, but it's even simpler. If I am more functional person, or I don't have knowledge about middleware, or basically I don't want to log there, I can also create the same test case using business values. So this would be the second example, same interface type. Now I need to specify what interface I would like to test. So this is based on IFTT configuration. This object is linked with my sales order interface from cloud application that I showed you. I just need to copy it to clipboard. Oh, sorry. Or I will press this from the list. Okay. Yeah. And right now I can, thanks to the configuration that I have in the system, I just put a purchase order number, and my message will be fetched from the middleware. The purchase order that we placed, this is this number. Let me take it into the clipboard, fetched. And right now the software will search messages on the middleware platform, both PIPO or cloud integration, and look for the message that fulfill my requirements. And test case is saved. So this is very simple. And right now I can try to execute it and see if it really works, and also show you how the validation rules are specified. So I'm executing it, and this is what is happening in the background. The message that I collected was injected to the middleware. It, let's say, virtualized the external system, and the interface was processed in regular way, like it is coming from external system. I should see now this message in my monitor, that this one is the latest message that was injected to the platform by the software just to performing testing. And here I'm having the result screen. The test case is passed, and I can see why it is passed. Because right now the software is automatically, thanks to the validation rules which are in configuration per interface, it is comparing the reference sales order document that was created and that I showed you, with the current sales order document that was created right now during this test case execution. I can choose a set of tables and fields that they are representing all my business important values, and check the functionality check if the document that is created during test case execution is exactly the same as the one that was stored during test case creation. And of course, the best approach, if this is automatic tool, to perform regression testing is to test all interfaces that might be connected with change that I implemented to the system, to validate if my change that didn't affect other interfaces. And I can also show it you quickly. I will choose few EDI scenarios that are integrated with process orchestration from different partners. I can choose my cloud interfaces that they were created before, and I can execute all of them with a single click. Now 33 different test cases are triggered. It means that corresponding middleware messages are injected to these two platforms, to PO and to CPI. And right now, in background, the processing is completely transparent. This is how it is, like data is received from regular systems. It's not affected anyhow by the software. And software is waiting till all documents will be created, both for inbound and outbound interfaces, and will start collective comparing. This is my report. So some of them are passed, some of them are failed. So it means that the hypothetical change that I implemented, maybe it's not so good. But let me show you how I can easily see what exactly failed. So let's, in this particular test example, it's again sales order. The reference sales order type, SAP document type was TA. In the newly created sales order, this is different value. This might be an error, but also this might be my change request. This is something that I wanted to achieve. So if this is my change request, then I can use this particular test case execution run as my new reference document and have it for further regression testing. Okay, so now I will pass you voice.
At least somebody stayed within the time. Thank you very much. I hope this was clear. It was a very short introduction what the product does. Because we know it's a very technical product, what we have organized and what we are setting up over the next couple of months also. We're doing specific webinars also around very specific topics, how you can test. We will also in December launch our application interface development strategy based on our product to do a more test-driven approach of interface development. If you want to pre-register or if you want to join, take my card or drop us an email and I will make sure you get an invite to any of the webinars. If there's any other question, please feel free to ask us or to approach us later on during lunch. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your time.
So I just have a quick announcement about lunch. So I'm afraid we're running a little bit behind schedule, so we have to tweak the schedule a little bit. But we have another Sitmuk tradition today. We have the Pizza Innovazione pizza truck outside. They're busy baking pizzas for us like crazy. And once they start serving, then you can feel free to go back in the tunnel here and help bring out more pizzas as they disappear. We keep the pizzas flowing the whole time. There's also salad and, of course, all the drinks that you'd like to have. We'll cut the lunch break maybe a little bit short to start with our Open Spaces program. And just so you're sure to sign up properly, we have a large piece of paper hung outside around the corner here on the glass wall. And please make sure that you sign up your name for 2 sessions. There'll be 2 time frames. And Katja Fischer has already gotten things started by putting up the diversity workshop there. Please sign up with your name, and then between the 2 sessions, pick 2 sessions, and and see what happens. And then we'll come back here after lunch and after the open spaces, or before the open spaces. We'll go into that at 1:15. That's when the open spaces will start. And the normal program will start again at 2:45. So before we go into the lunch break, though, we have another relaxation yoga exercise from Brigitte. Thank you. So, guten Appetit. Thank you, Brigitte.